In a world filled with intergalactic space battles, metahuman destruction on a global scale, and psychopathic serial hauntings, there's only one team who can make sense of it all. When your world is overrun with rampant pop culture, call Loop and Larry, Guardians of Geek.
This was our 60th explosion.
I cannot believe it. Hey, I'm Loop.
And I'm Larry.
And this is Guardians of Geek. 60 episodes, Larry. I can't believe it.
It's the big 6-0. We finally reached the big 6-0. I don't know what that means for us, but it's pretty substantial to me. I don't know.
I don't think it's that big a thing. Maybe 75 will be a big thing. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll make a cake for that one. For this one, I poured myself a glass of water.
Oh, there you go. That's something. That's like an enormous glass. What is that?
Well, you know, 60,
goblet.
60 is a pretty substantial year, so I had to pour myself a big glass of water.
The old big glass.
You know, I don't know.
So how are things been going?
Good. Things are good. There's been a few geeky things that have come down the pipe for us that we might want to talk about, but things are good. How about you?
We're doing well. Like it just keeping up with all the shows and more to come, right? Like it's like this is one of those years. I think the last year and this year, it's just going to be a never-ending flow of movies and shows now because now everything's on full production and there's 3,000 streaming services and networks, and so it's just so many shows to kind of keep up on. But it's been great.
We literally take 1 hour out of our week. That's the only hour we can spare when we're not watching TV or movies.
Yes.
That's literally every second of our day is spent watching something, and it's just going to get more. So you'll notice our podcasts go down to about 30 seconds long because that's all the time we're going to have to.
Zero time to do anything. Did you say you bumped into somebody that's a fan of the show?
I just want to give a quick shout out to Jason. I did a little thing on the weekend. I went to an antique store just to look around with my wife, and of course I found a Star Wars thing.
Of course,
that made me really excited. I'll show you. It's an original. I don't know if you can see it. It's the original Star Wars. It's called the Portfolio by Ralph LaQuarrie. It's 22 of his original drawings that the show was.
Oh wow, I remember that one. Yep.
So it's like 21 drawings. So they were all there, and it's original from 1977.
That's really cool.
I know. And so of course, because before I buy anything like that, I have to look up on eBay and see what the actual value of these things is before I pay for whatever it is.
Yeah.
So on eBay, that set is going for between $150 and $500.
Yeah.
And this one, the envelope's not in great quality, so it'd probably be around $150. They were selling it for $36.
Oh,
36.
Yoink.
even my wife said, "Yeah, you should probably get that."
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
So anyway, so that's the stuff. So I posted. I'm on a Facebook group called Star Wars Collectors because that's what I do.
Yes.
So I posted this thing just to show people and talk about and see what was going on, and I got a response from a guy named Jason who said, "Yeah, antiquing is great. I do a lot of that too. Will this appear on L&L?" And I said L&L, and he said, "Oh yeah, Loop and Larry, Guardians of Geek. I recognize you from Instagram." And I was like, "Woo!
That's awesome."
So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
To Jason for recognizing the show. That was pretty cool.
That's so cool. I love that. I saw the other day, and I totally forgot about it. In the same vein, I saw a post of like the Star Wars bed sheets.
Oh,
remember
yes.
So I used to have that and the comforter. And I saw Star Wars wallpaper as well, but I saw it. I'm like, I wish I hadn't have gotten rid of that. Like, I mean, I'm sure I could find it and buy it again if I really wanted it. I don't know what I would do with it, but it's like, but it would have been cool to have kept.
Well, so on this past Sunday, I went to a big toy show because of course I do that too, in Woodstock, Ontario, and one of the vendors had them.
Really? That's awesome.
He had the original sheets, the cover sheet and the fitted sheet, and I was so tempted to get it, but they only ever come in like a twin bed, like a single.
Yeah, I think it was an only twin bed actually.
Yeah, because they're for kids. So I'm like, I don't think I own it. Well, I don't own a twin bed. Like, what would I do with these things anymore? But
Yeah.
and I forgot to ask him how much they cost. But I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, I'm so tempted to buy these things because they're so cool. But what
I
would
just want to
do with
roll around on a Wookiee is all I really want.
What? I don't think you should ever say that again.
I will never say that again. Yeah, it was just one of those things I saw, and I'm like, oh yeah, I wish I'd never gotten rid of that. You know, those little things, like
Yeah.
you had them as a kid, and you're like, why did I get rid of this? Like, but I mean, no one knew things were like gonna have sentimental value or collectible at the time, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. But now I don't throw anything away, even like a dirty Kleenex, because you never know.
okay.
Maybe I'll
Let's go on to
someday.
Top Pop.
Oh, what?
Hey kids, it's time for Luke and Larry's Totally Tubular Top Pop!
All right, here we are, Top Pop. This is where we look at things that are where we're geeking out about, whether it's something coming up or something that we've just done, and things in pop culture. But today we're going to talk about a couple things and two movies, that one we saw together and one that just came out. So first, let's talk about the one we saw together called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Let's talk about that because everybody else is talking about it. So why don't we join in and talk with them?
If you haven't heard of this movie, and if you're watching this, you probably have, but it's basically, I think Winnie the Pooh and a bunch of other stories have become public domain now. So this one horror, this production company is basically taking these characters and turning them into these horror movies because they're cheap and easy to make and whichever. It cost about $100,000 to make this movie, and it's made over 2.5 million so far. So it's like, I mean, it's made money off it. It'll probably pay for the other movies they're going to do as well. Nothing but profit on this after that. The critic score. So that's it. The audience score on this is 52%. Critic score is 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. And they say it's possibly one of the worst reviewed movies of the year already.
Oh, yeah.
We went and saw it. They only had so many showings of it. It was very limited showing.
Yeah, we went on opening night, and there was one showing, and let me just say that the theater was only at half capacity.
Yeah.
Surprise!
There's actually more people there than I thought there was going to be for this, but I mean, people, there's a curiosity to it, right? Because you've heard about it, and it just looks so dumb that you have to go see it. I don't know. Do we want? There's nothing really to spoil in it per se, but my takeaway from it is they took it a little too seriously. I thought it was going to be a little bit more goofy than it was.
Yeah.
They could have had a lot more fun with some kills and things, and they just sort of like, I don't know what they pulled back a little bit on that, but then they made it too serious.
Yeah, they made it so essentially the reason it shouldn't have been as serious as it is, if you take a look at the poster or the trailer, and maybe we can post the trailer for this thing afterwards, it's Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, but they've grown to human size. So they're like big, bulky, human-sized things, but their faces look like rubber fright masks of Winnie the Pooh and Piglet. Like, they don't look like Winnie the Pooh or Piglet. They look like demented Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, but they're on human bodies. So it's goofy to start with.
Yeah.
You know?
Apparently they're supposed to be hybrids of human and animal. That's what they're supposed to be.
But which doesn't make any sense because they're supposed to have grown up from the Winnie the Pooh that we know, and he wasn't a hybrid when he was little.
I guess maybe they were in this story. I don't know. They're like, I know. It really makes zero sense.
It really doesn't. I mean, so it's the kind of movie that would have actually been quite good if it hadn't been associated with Winnie the Pooh. If they had just been like two psychopaths who lived in the woods and were crazy people who wore animal masks to be more menacing, it could have actually been kind of cool. But because they kept talking about Piglet coming in and killing, it's just so dumb. It was just, and it was so like they really did try to make a serious horror movie, and they failed.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in it that I thought like it just could have went further, or like, and some of it was just like, and with $100,000, like the acting isn't like great. It's not bad. I find luckily the one thing that saves it is that everybody's British, and people that are British just sound like they're better actors than people that can't act. I don't know why. They just sound like a little bit better, but I think they did the best job they could with what they had material wise. Like,
I guess so. And visually, I mean, it looked kind of cool. Like it was all shot in the woods, and it was gritty and stuff, but it was
100-acre woods, by the way.
100-acre, yes. But it was just like, I don't want to spoil too much because it did just come out, and you might want to see it, and it's but it's something.
Like, I didn't mind it. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it just wasn't as fun as I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
I thought it
that's
could have
what
been a
was.
little bit more fun and a little less like super serious. There was a
Yeah.
lot, like, and again, like the writing of it, there was a lot of like weird things in it that just didn't need to be there. But the best part of the whole movie is the opener. Like the opening
yeah.
sequence when it kind of sets up the movie, which is
That's
sort of an
pretty cool.
kind of a crude animation. That
Yeah.
was the best part of the whole movie. I thought that actually wasn't badly done.
No, and I actually thought this is actually going to be really cool because I thought that opening was pretty slick. I was like, this has potential. It went down.
Well, before we move on to that, I just want to remind you that they're also doing 2 more movies. They're going to do a sequel to this,
Right. Yes.
and they're also going to do Bambi the Reckoning and Peter Pan Neverland Nightmare will be the next 2 movies. Of course, I'm going to go see all of them.
Of course, and you're going to buy them all because you have to have them in your.
We're going to have the trilogy of
yes
of public domain horror movies. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that they've struck a chord. Like, I mean, I think that there is an audience for this because, and especially if they do more of them, I feel like more people. It will turn into like a cult phenomenon thing. That's
maybe later down. Yeah, it could.
I feel like people will like want to see more of their childhood fairy tale stories turned into like grotesque horror.
Well, that director got death threats too, because of that.
Yeah.
Because people, big fans of Winnie the Pooh, were like so angered about this whole thing. I mean, it's just for fun, but it's like they say Jurassic Park. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
I think it's sort of the message coming out of that movie. So
yeah,
it's worth like watch like for free on like one of the streamers when it comes out on Shudder or whatever it comes out.
Well, wait till it comes to Tubi, where you don't even have to rent that'd be the best way to do it.
Yeah, it's probably the best.
Yeah.
And the other movie, which also was like didn't have the greatest of critical acclaim, but audiences loved it, was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which we both saw. Rotten Tomatoes 47% critics. It's probably one of the lowest critical, like.
Well, I think the Eternals
like reviewed
got
movies.
I think the Eternals got 47% as well.
Okay,
so
and then but it's 84 audience for it. Not that we have to go by Rotten Tomatoes, but just gives you sort of an idea of what people think. Because anyway, a lot of people that I know that saw it liked it a lot. But it's the critics really like went after it.
I feel like the critics are done with Marvel. I feel like the critics are basing everything on, the way the Marvel used to be, as opposed to sort of looking at individual movies and seeing where things are going. And I don't even know for sure if all of the critics have seen all of the required movies. And you know what I mean? Because if you haven't watched the TV shows and the movies and those sorts of things, then the movies aren't easy to follow necessarily, because you're missing some of the character development. So I don't know how many of the critics have watched everything, so they're just looking at it as a standalone movie. I'm not sure what the critics are going at now, but I actually really enjoyed it. I thought I was more on the audience side. Like I think the audience score is pretty close to what I would have given it. I had a great time watching it. It's a popcorn movie. Like they didn't make a movie to look for Oscar nominations. You know what I mean? Like it's not that kind of movie. Like it's a movie that's you go to escape for 2 hours. You see things that you've never seen before. It's fun. There's a lot of cool action. Paul Rudd is hilarious as always.
Yeah, he's great in it. Yep.
It is what it is. Like it's not going to be the greatest movie of all time, but it's exactly what you hope for when you watch a Marvel movie. I think, especially like an Ant-Man movie. Like the Ant-Man movies, I think are really fun. Like that his things, and this one fits right in.
I think so too. I think the biggest problem with this movie is like, one, there's a lot happening in it as far as visually, because they're in the quantum realm. It's like they had to create this whole new world. There's a lot of goop and bugs and like aliens, and it's very confusing to watch visually. Like once they get into the quantum realm, like very early into the movie, within like probably the first like 20 minutes or something, they're already in, or 15 minutes. I'm not going to give away any like the big parts of it, but I think that's one of the problems with it. The other problem is the storyline, which they've built into phase 4, 5, and 6. And then this is the first movie of phase 5 for Marvel, with the multiverse. That has to be in this somehow. And some of these movies, I don't think all the movies will include the multiverse, but they're all building towards a big end to this, which is the Kang Dynasty Avengers movie. In the what's the other one? There's just 2 Avengers movies that are coming up back to back. So Secret Wars is the other one. So some of that has to be sort of like put into these movies in order for it to work and to move the larger story along. And like you're saying, unless you've watched all these movies and TV shows, like you can still watch it based on that, but you're missing the little nuances and things that are moving forward as well. So maybe critics didn't like that. I'm not sure.
Or they just didn't get it. Like they didn't get the nuances because they haven't seen. I don't know. I'm really not sure. I went back and read some of the reviews, and I wasn't connecting with their bad reviews. Like I wasn't seeing what the critics are seeing. So it surprised me.
And maybe some of the Marvel magic and like there's obviously they have a way of making movies, right? Like whether I know each movie's sort of different on its own and the way they're presented, but there is sort of a formula to Marvel movies, and maybe some of that's getting old. Like, you know what I mean? Like the one-liners. And someone said something once, which was I found quite funny, is that every character like is sarcastic in a Marvel movie. Like every character has one-liners and is sarcastic. No matter who they are, they're pretty much all kind of the same character, whether you're young or old or whatever. They're all like wisecracking, like, you know. But that's sort of comic book characters as it is, right? So
exactly. Well, and I mean, a lot of these characters you've known now for 12 years, you know what I mean, or pretty close. So you know, it's you kind of expect that that's what it's going to be. Like you know that that's what you're getting into. So I don't know, I felt this one kept with the formula, and it still worked, and I enjoyed it from start to finish. Like there wasn't any downtime for me. I thought it was a good running length too. It was only 2 hours,
which is perfect.
If you haven't gone, the only spoiler that we're going to give you is that you need to stay to the very end. Some movies they've been doing the mid-credit scene, and then that's it. This one you need to actually stay to the very end of it. And that's at the end. It's a cool ending. Like there's a very cool post-credit scene.
It's great.
Yeah, so you do need to watch to the end. But yeah, I would highly recommend it. And it's actually a movie that I would see again. Like I would go back and see it. Unlike like for example, The Eternals. Like I wasn't a big fan of The Eternals. So it's not like I love every Marvel movie that comes out. I didn't really like that one. I've watched it once since then, but I wouldn't have gone back to watch it in the theater. But this one I would be happy to go back and watch again. So I saw
Doctor Strange I think 2 or 3 times in the theater because I just enjoy, because there was so much happening in it, and I just like I had to see it more. Like I just had to, like, because you take in a lot more on a second watching of some of these movies, because there's like again the Easter eggs, little nuances that they throw in them. I just want to go over just quickly on these. So this is phase 5 for Marvel. It's the first film of this. So here's this is what we're can expect in this phase 5: Ant-Man, Guardians, the Marvels, Captain America, Blade, and Thunderbolts will end this phase. So that's what we're gonna get. So that's like what, 6 movies?
That's not bad.
That's pretty good.
That's a manageable amount of movies.
It is. And then so for shows, Secret Invasion, Loki, which I think are both shot and done and they're ready to go. What If season 2, Ironheart, Echo, Agatha Covering of Chaos, and Daredevil are like so part of this next phase 5 of movies and shows. And there's a lot of watching.
There is a lot of watching. And how long does this phase, like when does this phase end? Do they have an end date for it?
I think it's it's next year, like mid next year or something, and then they'll start the next phase. I don't have the exact dates, but and then I think like Fantastic Four. Well, the next phase is the last phase, so that's where you're going to get the Avengers and Fantastic Four and all that will be in phase 6.
Phase 6 is the last phase.
Yeah, because the multiverse phase started. I can't remember what they call this one, but it's Multiverse Saga. It started at phase 4, so it starts and works its way through, and now we're just starting phase 5 of it. So
so and phase 6 ends the multiverse. It's not the end of Marvel, it's just the end of
the end of this like overarching storyline. So where the first one was Thanos, this one is this was the multiverse. So
gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense.
And the next one will be, I think, DC and Marvel crossover, because Marvel will end up Disney will buy DC somehow in that time period, and then
and
James Gunn will be working for Marvel.
Don't forget that they're going to slide Star Wars in there too. So
somehow it'll all come together.
Star Wars Guardians of the Galaxy crossover. That'll happen.
We can only hope.
Do we?
Are you
hope
ready for the
that?
pop capacitor?
I'm sure I'm always ready for the pop capacitor.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, it's the pop capacitor. This is where we revisit a movie, TV show, cartoon, or toy and see if it still holds up from our childhood. So today we're going to be talking, well, let's back it up a little bit. Last time we talked about Automan.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a twofer because these shows came out and they overlapped at one point. And this is the other show. Yeah, and we hadn't watched Automan in years. So I don't know. Had you ever watched it? I don't remember.
I didn't watch it when it was on the air. So but this one I have, but that one I did not.
And I had watched this one as well, which is called Manimal. But for some reason I thought they were on the same channel because I thought they were always back to back, but apparently they're on two different networks. Yeah. This one ran on NBC from September 30th to December 17th, 1983. Only 8 episodes, so it didn't get it.
Like a month and a half.
Yeah, so it got canceled. Yeah. So in keeping in the tradition of badly reviewed shows, because we had Ant-Man, we had Winnie the Pooh, and now we have Manimal. So we have all 3 back to back. This show is all about the worst of the worst. So this show centers on character Jonathan Chase, played by, this is the best name in Hollywood, Simon McCorkindale, a shape-shifting man.
Simon McCorkindale.
So that name sounds more made up than his actual name. Look at the show. Like,
seriously, they should have just kept his real name as his character.
Corkindale. A shape-shifting man who can turn himself into any animal he chooses. He uses his ability to help police solve crimes. So how can he go wrong with that premise?
You can go wrong in a lot of ways, apparently.
I like this other description. Dr. Jonathan Chase, wealthy, young, handsome, a man with the brightest of futures, a man with the darkest of pasts.
I don't know. This Manimal.
Master of the secrets that divide man from animal, animal from man, Manimal. Oh, that is deep.
That was the actual narration of episode, like from episode or episode 1, I guess, on. That was the narration of the opening. Manimal. It's so great. I love it.
Oh my God. So this show basically, this guy solves crimes, just to put it in a nutshell. But he also handles animals as well. Yes. I think is what his job. And within the show,
he's also a professor.
Yeah, he's a professor of animals.
Yes, he's a professor of animals.
I don't know. They don't really quite explain. I think they may at one point explain what he exactly does, but
they don't really explain much of anything in this show, so I'm not really sure.
He can turn into a hawk, a black panther, which is the 2 things he normally does. A horse. Throughout the series, he turns into a horse, a dolphin, a bear, and a bull, and at one point a snake. Yeah. And what didn't happen in the episode we watched. We watched the pilot episode. He also is able to take on the traits of animals, like quick speed of a panther. Yeah. Like which I don't know why he just doesn't do that all the time rather than turning into full animals. But anyways, we're gonna go through the hits and misses of this show. Which was also the number 15 on the TV Guide's list of the worst shows of all time. Their top 50 worst shows. So we'll go through hits and misses of the show, and we'll see if it still stands up. Or
if it ever stood up.
I don't know. We'll find out in this exciting episode of Manimal.
Let's preface this by saying we both actually watched this as kids. Like we both remember vividly watching this show, which means we probably watched all 8 episodes. If there were only 8 episodes, we probably watched the entire series.
Probably, or most of it.
Yeah. So I mean, so we were riveted back then.
Now I'm not sure. Not so sure.
So much.
Anyway. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe we'll convince ourselves that it's
change our own minds. I don't know.
You never know what's going to happen.
Just like Corkindale can become a panther, we can maybe become believers in Manimal.
Maybe we can. This is going to be a stretch on this one.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, so Manimal, let's start with hits and misses.
All right. Let's
Larry,
start
what
with
do you got? Do you want to start
let's
us
start
on a
with good
positive
stuff.
note, or are you going to go right into the misses?
No, let's start with the positive. Let's start
Okay.
with positive. So we like Loop said, we watched the pilot episode.
Yeah.
And the pilot episode actually starred Terry Kaiser, who you may remember as Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's. He was the
That's right.
Yeah, he was the dead guy, who I've always been a fan of. I like Terry Kaiser. I think he's kind of fun. So when his name came up on the screen, I was like, "Oh, cool! Bernie's going to be in this. This is great." And he was actually pretty fun. Like he was. I mean, I guess that's not true. He wasn't fun, but he was fun to watch just because it was Bernie. So that's something that was good.
that was a hit. Okay.
That was a hit. Terry Kaiser was in it.
I'll start with a hit off the top too.
Okay.
I thought the opener for the show was pretty solid.
Okay.
Like it had like a lot of good clips that made it look very exciting.
Yes.
I thought the music was a little lackluster. Like the theme song was a bit lackluster. It was very keyboardy, but not in a good way. It's very dark sort of keyboard. But I thought that the opener, like it was typical 80s opener with people like
yes.
the name under, whatever. So it's like it's the usual terms and name keys. So I thought it like it was a pretty decent opener. It got you kind of excited and jacked about the show.
Yes.
And then the show started. So
okay, that's kind of a hit and a miss, but
it's a hit with a miss disguised in it, basically.
Yeah. It's a backhanded miss.
Yeah,
backhanded hit. I mean, yeah, we'll keep that there. Okay, so I'll give you another hit.
Okay.
The transformation. So he transforms into these animals. The transformation effect for 1983 was actually pretty cool. It was very reminiscent of American Werewolf in London. They used sort of the same effect. So you'd see like his hand would kind of turn into a claw like this, and then it would bubble. Like his hand would bubble, and then it would sort of dissolve into like a different form of a hand, like darker and some fur, and it would bubble some more, and his face would sort of bubble a little bit as if like things are happening under the surface. It was kind of cool. Turns out Stan Winston was the creator of the special effects, so they actually got a special effects master to come in and do the special effects. So the transformation special effect was actually pretty neat. But I'm gonna flip this a little bit into a miss.
Okay, good.
The transformation effect happened like every 10 minutes.
Oh, I know. It was a lot.
And I'm like, okay, we've seen the transformation, and the transformation process takes probably like a minute and a half or something like that. And it's the exact same. They showed the exact same transformation of his hand turning into a claw and the claws growing out like at least 5 times in the course of the show. And so by the end of it, you're like, okay, we get it. Yep. He curls up his hand and it becomes a claw. Thank you.
When he turned into a panther, it looked kind of cool because the claws would actually come out of his hand, like you're saying. But sometimes they used like a fake paw that looked really cheap.
Yes.
And it looked like, when like on Saturday Night Live when Toons is the driving cat is driving, they have those fake paws come up on the steering wheel. It kind of looked like that at times. Sometimes it looked really cool, and then sometimes it just looked like a fake like paw of like a stuffed animal.
Yeah.
It looked really
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. And then his face would change as well. They would do like a profile to sort of show his face growing a little bit, but then if you saw him from the front, it wasn't quite as big, and like it wasn't as really consistent with this. But anyway, I mean, that's the whole premise of the show, is that he could morph into an animal, so it had to be pretty spectacular. It's just that they showed it way too much.
Yeah, and it seemed pretty painless too. Compared to like you're basically changing your whole body. I won't even get into, I mean, I can morph this into a little bit of a miss as well on this one, but where did his clothes go?
So
he goes in, he turns into these animals, but he's usually wearing like behind me, like a 3-piece suit.
Yeah.
Like, so he's very well dressed and dapper, but then his clothes would just completely disappear. And then he'd turn back and he'd have all his clothes on again.
Well, even worse than that, there were a couple of scenes where you saw his jacket actually rip at the back because he's bulking out, because he's becoming this thing. So his clothes actually physically rip. So, but then he's back to human and his clothes are repaired. So I don't know.
Well, he's got a tailor with him as well that fixes up his
sends
clothes while he's
the
fighting
clothes in.
crime. The tailor's actually like just doing a little sewing, getting it all done.
I don't understand. Like that was just, it was so ridiculous that he was fully made up and like, I don't know. I have no explanation about.
I think in this show you have to sort of throw all that out the window. Like anything that you think would be like that would make any sense needs to go.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another hit.
Okay, I'll take the hits. Let's do all the hits first, and then we'll get them out of the way.
Oh, this is my last one.
Oh, I only have one more too. Okay.
So we're getting them right out of the way.
A lot of hits going on in this.
A lot of hits now. So this hit is more about the nostalgia of the 80s cop shows, because all 80s crime apparently happened in warehouses. If there was a crime going on, the police would inevitably find the bad guys in a warehouse with their forklifts putting crates of illicit material on the shelves. And so there was always, no matter what show you watched, A-Team, this thing, they all had warehouse shootouts, and this was no exception. So I just loved seeing the old 80s warehouse cops and robbers shootout.
You think that the police in these shows would just check warehouses on a regular basis? They probably catch half the criminals in New York if they just just checked a few doors. That's all they need to do.
Or maybe just lock the warehouses. Just don't allow people in. Put a curfew on the warehouse. Nobody can enter a warehouse after 8 p.m. Crime is done.
Crime solved. We won't need Manimal at that point. It's
exactly.
No need for the Manimal.
No. So that was just a nostalgia thing. I just thought it was super fun to see, and yet another crime happening in a warehouse.
I don't know why. I don't know why that's always happening.
Here's
my last hit.
Okay.
Is the super slow, weird versions of regular hit songs that were in the show.
Yes.
At one point, he goes to a club and they're playing "Beat It." But I don't know if it was Michael Jackson's version. It sounded like a much slowed down version, and it sounded like another artist, but I don't think it was him doing it.
No, I don't think so. Because I thought the same thing. I'm like, wow, they actually paid for the rights for this song? No. And I totally don't think
I don't think it was.
No.
But it was kind of cool to have that music in it, like just again for the nostalgia's sake, to have these hit songs of the time like just playing in the background. But I was like, that's not the real song. There's no way that's the real song.
But at the time, if you're watching it, it would have been cool because that would have been a brand new song and you would have been all excited about hearing it, even if it wasn't the real thing. I don't know. But it kind of took me out of the show for a minute because like, what is this? What are they doing here?
That's what, I'm out of hits. Okay, so let's go to the misses on this show.
All misses now. Okay, I'm going to start with the big one.
Okay.
So the big one. So again, we watched the pilot episode. So you'd think that the pilot episode would give you all the information you need to be like hooked on this show and want to keep watching it. There was no backstory for why Corkington became Manimal. They just jumped right into the show, and he was like changing into Panthers like within minutes of the opening of the show, and there was no explanation as to why he could do this or how he learned to do this or anything. The pilot episode originally was probably 90 minutes. It was a 90-minute opening. So we watched it on this Blu-ray, on this DVD set that Loop actually owns.
Well, when I bought Automan, I felt like I needed to buy Manimal, and they're both on Amazon. So I was like, I'll just grab it Manimal while I'm at it. I remember liking the show at the time for sure.
Yeah, well. But anyway, so this was an hour and 14 minutes without the commercials. In an hour and 14 minutes, they did not once talk about his ability, like why he's doing this. Everybody just bought it. Like they were just like, oh, this is what he can do. Like, why would you not create a pilot where you give this whole cool background story? Because the background, if you watch the first episode, or episode 2 maybe, no, it's gonna be the first episode, it tells you that he spent time in Africa with his father and learned this power from like an African tribe or something along those lines.
That happens near the end, right, of this one.
But they barely talk about it. And I'm like, like,
considering it sort of sets up the series, you'd think that this stuff would come out a little bit earlier, or there might be like a flashback at the beginning to kind of set up this child and something that's happened to him or whatever. And it's like, this will go into my miss is that it's kind of about him himself, but he's this dapper, debonair sort of person. He's a professor. He he's obviously like an animal expert of some sort. He has all these animals and stuff, but he's like borderline creepy. Number one, there's a lot of creepy things he does. Like at one point, the what's her name? Brooke McKenzie is the detective that he's teamed up with in this, who's actually a pretty decent character, I thought, like as far as like just what she like who she is in the show. But he takes her and puts her in a bed and changes her clothes and everything. It's like,
well, but even worse than that, there's one scene a little bit later on where he transforms into a cat and somehow breaks into this woman's apartment, and this woman is like the mastermind criminal, breaks into the apartment and changes into a cat, and the woman comes out of the shower wearing a robe and finds the cat and just assumes that the neighbor's cat broke into her apartment. I don't know how it she's talking on the phone, holding the cat in her like holding the cat. They cut to a scene where the cat's head is buried inside the robe of literally inside the robe of this woman, and then pops its head out and looks around, which means that this dude turned into a cat and stuck his head inside the woman's robe. She wasn't wearing anything under the robe.
You're getting a free show. I know. Was that Ursula Andrews? Is that from Bond?
Yes, it was Ursula Andress. Andress. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so he, as a cat, was like, "Hey, opportunity!"
It's like none of this makes sense in the show. Like, there's so many things that like missing really things.
So I've got another miss. This is a pretty big one too.
Okay.
When he turns into a panther,
oh no,
his whole job, like the whole premise of this thing, is that he turns into animals to help the police do things. For the first like 20 minutes of the show, with this whole shootout at the warehouse, he's a panther, literally does nothing. Like, he doesn't do anything in this warehouse except for run around the warehouse and make the bad guys go, was that a panther? What was that over there? I think there was like a cat or something running around. Like, he doesn't jump on anybody. Like, he should jump on them, then like tear them up or something. I don't know.
He's essentially just doing surveillance is all he's really doing. But couldn't he have been like an ant? Like, I think of a lot of smaller animals that, like a mouse, that could do surveillance. Like, I don't know, he has to be a giant panther.
I have no idea, but he didn't do anything. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then the female cop shows up, and she's the one who kind of figures out what's going on, which leads me into another miss.
Okay, awesome.
She is intrigued by the fact that there's a panther, which I can understand. Like, a panther shouldn't be in downtown New York or wherever I think it was New York or Chicago, one of this cities. So she's intrigued by why this panther is there. So she's curious about that. But then a little later on, she's investigating further, and she sees the bad guys sitting on a park bench, and so she wants to take pictures of them. So she she doesn't have any equipment on her as a cop, so she like commandeers a camera from this grandpa and little boy.
Oh God, yeah.
She takes their camera and starts taking pictures, but then he at this point he had turned himself into the hawk, which if you're watching the YouTube you can see behind Loop there. He turns himself into a hawk so he can fly surveillance over this park. Well, this is just a bird. Like, you're you're like in Central Park. I'm sure that there are lots of hawks in Central Park. This was not a unique, like if he had been like an ostrich or something, that would have been different. But anyway, so she ends up taking all of her photos of the hawk and lets the bad guys go. I'm like, why are you so interested in this hawk? Like, it's literally just flying. It's not doing anything. It's not like swooping down and attacking people. She was just so easily distracted by a bird.
I feel like at one point too, at the beginning, she was in uniform, like police uniform. And then suddenly she's a detective. Like, why is she in street uniform, like in street clothes at the beginning?
I don't know, but I have no idea. But once she lost the uniform, she had no like equipment at all. Like no, she had no camera, she had no nothing.
And very like sloppy police work too. Like just
Very sloppy.
like has no idea what to do next unless like Jonathan Chase can tell her or whatever. It's like
Yeah, no
just
idea.
doesn't make any sense.
No idea.
So weird. I've got one of my misses is that it's like the whole concept of the show. Like it just doesn't like who uses like a police consultant, like an animal like as a consultant, like an animal wrangler as a consultant. Like how does that actually help police work?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like I don't know what you would possibly use this person for, where you need, unless you find like there's an animal loose or something and you need to get him to come and get it or something. Like there's like how would that possibly work?
I don't know. I don't know. And did they not do any sort of background check on him to make sure that, you know, he's not a criminal himself? Like he just said, "I'm now your consultant," and they're like, "Okay."
Yeah, like they just sort of accept it.
So...
It just doesn't make any sense. And he's doing this on the side, like how, like not necessarily helping the police. He's just solving his own crimes essentially. Like he's like a vigilante, really, is what he's doing. And he's got this other guy with him named Ty Earl, who's this other guy he went to like was in the war with, because they kind of show that, but they don't say why he's still hanging out with them and he's helping him out. So he kind of drives like Jonathan Chase around in that, but they don't really say like why he's still with them or what he's doing.
They do explain that in the second episode, but again, this is the pilot. This is where we should be learning all this stuff.
Yeah, who is this guy?
Yeah, so but in the second episode, it turns out that he was his captain in Vietnam or something like that, and they were captured by the Viet Cong and they were put in a cage. And
yeah, that was in the first. I think that was in the pilot. They showed that.
Was it?
I'm pretty sure, because I didn't watch anything other than the pilot, and I'm pretty sure there was a really short scene, but it didn't say like why he's still with them. Like it's like okay, so they're friends in the war, and he helped them escape, and Ty knows that Jonathan Chase can change into animals because he kind of sees it.
That's right.
So, but doesn't explain what he does or how he helps the whole situation. Like helps Jonathan Chase get criminals. Like I don't know what he's supposed to do. Like
well, he's more like a driver. He's just
like he's just more like a one-line guy. Like he's got like a funny one-liner once in a while, and kind of like can't believe what's going on, but he's still hanging out with them. Like I don't know. There's so many questions in the show like that are like it just doesn't make sense. Like why any of this is happening.
This was not well thought out at all. So, well, and just the ineptness of the cops. At one point, the chief, or no, the female cop, I can't remember her name. What's her name in the show?
Detective Brooke McKenzie.
Oh, Brooke McKenzie. Okay, so Brooke McKenzie's partner, who's this old guy, gets shot at the beginning of the episode, and you think he's dead. He's not quite dead, but so her whole thing is she wants to find out who shot him, even though she was standing there and kind of saw it. So she goes back to the station and she's talking to the chief about like wanting to find out who shot him, and the chief is like, whatever, if you want to, I don't care, it's whatever, it's no big deal. He had no interest in like pursuing the fact that one of his officers was shot and is on life support in the hospital. And no interest at all. He's like, if you want to. I mean,
it's so weird. Like the whole show, the whole concept of the show is so weird.
The cops are so inept. I've never seen an 80s cop show where the cops were this inept. Like it just didn't make any sense.
The only other miss I have is just like him himself. Like he's like not like it's not the actor, but just like the character is like he's almost too debonair. Like he's not like in England. He's like English in like the States. Yeah. Like he sticks out like a sore thumb. Like you can't just have him walking around like helping the police out and no one notice him. Like he's just completely like would stand, and he's wearing a suit or a tux or whatever in every scene.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's like blending in at all. Like it's like, but I guess if he can just lose his clothes when he turns into animals, and I guess that's like, I guess that's all he needs, really. He's
got magic clothes, so I mean, maybe the clothes aren't even real. I don't know. Maybe the
magic clothes.
I don't know what he's got, but yeah, no, the casting was really strange. Like it just didn't make any sense. Like none of it makes any sense. I want to bring up one other thing that was just a point in the show that happened that, again, I don't know who thought of this, but for whatever reason, the bad guys at one point have U.S. What is it? Armed Forces of America ID. Like
Okay.
that's their ID cards. They have ID. They have to steal trucks at one point to, make a convoy. So they stop like a line of trucks and they jump up onto the foot rail beside the driver, and the driver rolls down the window and the guy says, U.S. Armed Forces, get out. And the truck driver's like, okay. And so the truck driver gets out and they commandeer this entire like row of trucks with U.S. Armed Forces ID. There's like, that's a soldier. And so apparently if you have a U.S. Army ID, you could just take a truck. Truck drivers will just like, give it to you.
There's so many things in this, just like
I'm like, what kind
like
of
everybody's so bumbling. I think that's part of the problem. Everybody's like incredibly bumbling, and it just doesn't make sense why like any of it. Like, why do they need this guy? Like,
I don't know. I've got one more.
Oh, good.
One more miss. And it's the thing that happened at the very end of the episode. So at the very end of the episode, the bad guy, like who's running this show, is in his swimming pool, and he's on the phone talking about, we'll do it next time, or we'll, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even know what he's talking about, but he's literally in his pool on a lounger in his pool. But then it cuts away to Corkindale. I don't even know his name. I just like saying
It's Jonathan Chase is the character.
Jonathan Chase. Okay. Cuts away
Matt Corkindale is the
Buck
actor.
Corkindale, right? Yes.
Yeah. The late great.
Yeah. But it cuts away to him and he says something about, oh, don't worry, we will get him. I have some ideas. And then it cuts back to the bad guy in his swimming pool, and he looks up and there's a shark fin coming towards him.
I forgot about that.
A fin of a shark coming towards him in his swimming pool. So obviously Manimal had turned himself into a shark and put himself in the pool together. Well, the guy had been in the pool for like a good long time. So did Manimal turn into the shark on dry land and then just like flop into the pool?
Or did he enter as a person in a full suit?
Yeah,
and then turn into a shark?
Into the pool. Either way, there's no possible way the guy could not have known that some thing jumped into his pool with him. Like,
you'll find out next time on Manimal.
I know. It was literally like Sharknado. It was like a Sharknado moment in this show. It was so ridiculous. Like, it wasn't even like they didn't even try to make it plausible. She's like, are you kidding me?
Why?
A shark in a swimming pool that nobody saw coming. Yeah, that sums up this whole show.
Yeah, that pretty much does. I don't know. I'll just like, as far as if it stands up, other than the 80s nostalgia of it, like, and it's such a niche sort of weird show. It's like, it's not that great a show. Like, generally, like, it's, and I know I think like that somebody has like the rights to this, that they want to make it into an actual movie, like a cheesy sort of movie.
Well, they did. Okay, so
Will Ferrell.
Yeah, in September, I've got this here. In September of 2012, Sony Pictures Animation was developing a live action CG based film on Manimal, and the series creator and producer Glenn A. Larson was going to be the producer of this thing. It was slated to be produced by Will Ferrell and Adam McKay through their Gary Sanchez Productions, but the problem was that Gary Larson died in 2014, and that sort of put an end to that project. But yeah, obviously Will Ferrell and Adam McKay liked this show enough, or found it nostalgic enough, that they wanted to reboot it and make it a live action CG movie.
Yeah, I don't, like, as an adult, this is ridiculous. Like, it's so, but as a kid, I remember thinking it was the coolest thing. Like, I thought it was like, oh, this is wild. This guy could turn into animals. But I wasn't really looking at the fine detailed plot points of it at the time. I mean, it is just an action show, but I just when I look at Automan, it looks so ridiculous, but it worked. Yeah. This has all the setup to be a great show. Like the female lead's great. The detective, he's actually really charming. Like, Ty's great for the one-liners and things. That character, it's got like cool animals in it, but it just does not work because I think it's so doesn't make any sense. No. And I think, like, in general, there's like literally zero logic with this show. Like, zero logic.
none of it makes any logical sense at all. Like you said, Automan, you could see potentially how that could have worked. Like it's obviously fantasy or sci-fi, but there was logic there. Like it all kind of made sense. This one is just, they were not thinking about how people interact with each other or what cops actually do. It's like they had no idea what cops do.
I don't want to, like, I mean, I haven't watched the rest of the series. Like I watched it probably as a kid, but I didn't I haven't watched it since then. So maybe it kind of comes together more so as the series goes on. Cause like sometimes pilots aren't that great. You know what I mean? Like it's, well, this is one I don't think really this does not hit the mark as a pilot to me.
And the problem was that they shot 4 episodes of it, and then it was sort of put on hiatus. So they ran 4 episodes for 4 weeks, and then it was put on hiatus for like a month. And then they decided to run like the last 3 episodes just to burn them off. Like they were really, like it barely made past episode 4, but because they had already produced this whole thing, they ran them, but the ratings were so bad apparently that it was just like, nah. I
also heard too, like when they did the debut episode, it was up against Dallas, like the episode that said who shot JR, and so it was like the most watched show, and then this was up against it, so they kind of didn't have a chance at the beginning. But I feel like had they worked out some of the kinks in it, it could have become like a half decent, like an A-Team style show, and maybe been half decent. But it was like, again, they have cool animals in it. How could you go wrong with a panther?
Exactly. Well, and just a real quick thing. So Glenn A. Larson, who is the creator of this show, also created Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Quincy, BJ and the Bear, Magnum PI, and Knight Rider, and The Fall Guy. Like, he had a pretty good run. Like I mean,
they all can't be hits. Like this again had all the elements. It just didn't come together, and it was just
supposed to.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was not good. Does it hold up? No.
Yeah, I don't know if it holds up. Like again, I haven't watched the whole series, so maybe it gets a bit better. I don't want to give a full judgment on it, but for 80s nostalgia, it's kind of fun. But as if you like the things that make sense, it does not.
No, that's a good rap right there. You like things that make sense.
If that's your bar, is things that actually make sense, then this does not. Like I can suspend my disbelief to a point, but
that this doesn't come anywhere near that point.
But he does have nice hair. I'll give him that. That is a nice set of hair that he's got there. So
it was a pretty panther. I like the panther. That was nice.
Panther looked very cool. I like the panther. Maybe we should just end there because I don't know what else to say about it.
No, I got nothing.
Well, that's it for the show. Our next episode will be the Oscar recap of the Oscars, which come up on March 12th, I believe. And we both have seen all the movies.
Yep. So we are every single movie.
Well, yeah, every movie from Best Picture. Which would represent a lot of the or a good portion of the nominations. But so we've seen all 10 Best Picture nominees. So I'm excited to watch this Oscars this year. And so that'll be our next episode. And again, check us out on our socials, and we'll see you next time on Loop and Larry, Guardians of Geek.
Bye-bye.
Produced by Matthew C. Loop and Lawrence Simner. A Loop and Larry production.
Bueller.
He likes it. Hey, Mikey.
Bueller.
Bad news. Fog is getting thicker.
And Leon's getting larger.
Inconceivable.
Brian's right. It's an elf.
Wax on.
Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe?
Oh, Captain, my captain.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Wax off.